Hey guys, how's it going? It's Philip at Trade Genius. Hope you guys are having a good week. Wanted to dive into this next segment with Bitcoin in turmoil and talk about our current situation where we're coming down, pulling back again down to lower price levels, but recognizing when we have a bottoming price action going on. And the way we can do that is looking at the internals. So I'm going to go over what this lower stuff means, this orange stuff, this green color, this red color, and how you can use that by looking at it and observing when it changes when we're in these areas. This is looking back a little farther than where we are currently, but just to kind of give you an example of how things change. So we're going to take a look at that in this video and help you guys identify when this thing can be signaling to turn up from where we are now. All right, let's dive into it.
Trade Genius.
Guys, really quickly before we dive into this video, just a reminder, we have these specials running. And if you're confused in this market and want to have some feedback, being in the room is really good. We can kind of tell you how things are developing, not only in the crypto side of things, but also in the equity markets, the indices. We're mapping out the larger levels that are probably going to see a reaction on, so we can kind of help you through that, as well as option strategies if you got stock portfolios. There's a lot of things you can do to help insure yourself against losses. So encourage you guys to check that out. $2.99 would be a year with us in the room. Pretty good deal. All right, let's dive into this. All right, guys, so what we have up here is just the price of Bitcoin in these candle bars, but below what we have here is the indicator BitMEX funding and BitMEX funding and premium index. And what that does is it gives us basically the premium index, where that's trading at. It's either trading at a premium or it's trading at a discount. That's this orange area here. And then the funding is what the expected funding rate will be. So if the expected funding rate is positive, then it'll show green, and then a bar will confirm that. And if it's expected to go red, it'll switch to red with these dots, and then the bar will confirm negative funding. So it shows you which side of the trade the crowd is on. Are they bullish or are they bearish? So if they're bullish, it's going to cost money to the upside. And if they're overly bearish, then it's going to cost money to the downside. And they can be a counter indicator. Okay, so you bear that in mind. Now, what we find on bottoms, okay, is that if we go down into these areas where we have constant discount on the premium index, so this orange area is in a negative state. This line here in the middle is 0, right? So if it's in this state, that goes along with when we see areas of where we pull back and we consolidate, and we see that. One thing to key in on, and again, these indicators you can get off of the TradingView. These are available on TradingView, open indicators, but you can watch when this starts to change. And what I look for on this, when we're in this current state, and again, this is going back, this is December 2019. When we go and we get to this area where now it starts to change, you don't see the negative funding anymore, okay? You start to see constant funding in the positive, okay? And you start to see the premium index start to flip to positive. So it's not pegged negative anymore. And you start to see that change. That's generally a sign that this area or this condition of going down, this bearish market condition is starting to consolidate and starting to come to an end. And then as we move forward here, going into the new year, we notice that as we broke out of that state where it was always negative, then we start seeing signs of positivity on the premium index, and definitely on the funding we see stay positive. And then we come out of that. So there's different ways and times and conditions to play the funding rate. Sometimes it's a counter indicator, and at other times it also acts as a shift in sentiment. So there's different ways to read that, but we're currently in this state. So if we jump forward now to what I'm talking about, you'll notice we're in that state, right? So what we're going to want to see is, as this continues on, we see this transition happen. So I'm just showing it to you because it's a pretty good indication of confirming that, the market's trying to find a bottom, trying to consolidate. But once we get to where the condition changes from this constant negative orange state and then starts to show positive, and especially when we start to see the negative funding print stop, that's when we look to get out of this zone. Okay, so until that happens, I'm not going to get overly excited about going up. I want to let the market kind of tell us when it's ready to do that. And right now, we're not seeing that quite yet, but we will. But I'm looking at that condition to change. So that's a tip for you guys when we're in this kind of crisis mode with the markets and everything. And the markets are still weighing on Bitcoin, even though BTC is doing a real good job right now of kind of staying somewhat decoupled from the market. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you'll notice this blue line is what the S&P 500 is doing, and you'll notice that S&P 500 has made lower lows. Bitcoin has actually managed to make higher lows and a higher high. So you can make the argument that it's kind of decoupling. The only caveat to that is it is during the day seeming like it is wanting to kind of gyrate up and down with the S&P 500, but it's not seen as severe of a pullback as the markets, the S&P 500 and the other indices are seeing, the U.S. equity markets. They're still just kind of down here at the lows. Whereas if Bitcoin was doing that, we'd be closer to the 5,000 mark as opposed to where we are now at 6,400. So something to bear in mind there as this thing is starting to move along. But we're starting to see signs again that we might be starting to try and break away from what the S&P 500 is doing. So for me, the next thing is going to be if the market rolls over hard again this week on the S&P 500. Basically, what I'd like to see is Bitcoin at the very least maintain these levels, and that's something to be seen, because when the liquidations do hit pretty hard and we have another red day of losses that are heavy, Bitcoin still seems to be somewhat sympathetic to that. So we have to bear that in mind. So that's it on this video. Just recognize where we are, and where we are is that we've pulled back from higher levels, much like what we did at the end of 2019 into 2020. And using those internals, you can kind of get a heads up on when the sentiment is shifting amongst traders. Okay, so I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I will answer them. Otherwise, please hit like and subscribe, guys. It really helps out our channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.